In the remote expanse of the Allegheny forest, a dense canopy of trees stretches as far as the eye can see, their gnarled branches weaving a thick veil of darkness as the sun sets. The chirps of crickets fill the air, a natural symphony that grows louder with the encroaching night. Among the trees, a single tent stands out, its bright orange fabric a stark contrast against the muted browns and greens of the forest floor. The tent belongs to Nathan, a 28-year-old solo camper with a deep love for adventure and solitude. Nathan had set out from his bustling city life seeking peace and a break from his high-stress job in technology. His friends had warned him against camping alone, especially in such a secluded spot, but Nathan, with his typical adventurous spirit, dismissed their concerns. As night falls, Nathan sits by his small campfire, the flames casting ghostly shadows on the trees around him. He roasts marshmallows, a simple pleasure, and sips from a flask of whiskey, the warmth of the alcohol a welcome companion against the chill of the night. His only other companion is a small, battered radio, which crackles with the weather forecast, clear skies, a cold night. Several hours after nightfall, the forest symphony grows eerily quiet. Nathan senses a change in the air, a palpable tension that makes the hairs on the back of his neck stand. He scans the darkness, his headlamp casting beams of light that seem to be swallowed by the thick undergrowth. Shrugging off a feeling of unease, he decides it's time to turn in for the night. Inside the tent, Nathan wraps himself in his sleeping bag, the rustle of the nylon the only sound in the otherwise silent night. Just as he begins to drift off to sleep, a sudden snap of a twig jolts him awake. His heart races. He tells himself it's just a deer or a small animal, nothing to worry about. But then, another sound, whispers, barely audible, as if someone is speaking just outside the tent. Frozen in fear, Nathan holds his breath, straining to hear more. The whispers grow slightly louder, a mix of words he can't quite understand, as if spoken in a different language, or perhaps a distorted form of English. Nathan reaches slowly for his flashlight and knife, the tools feeling reassuringly solid in his trembling hands. Deciding he needs to know what's outside, Nathan unzips the tent, just a few inches, peering out into the darkness. The beam of his flashlight dances across the trees, revealing nothing but the endless forest. The whispers stop abruptly, the silence now as loud as the noises before. With a surge of courage, Nathan steps out of the tent, flashlight sweeping the area. His breath forms small clouds in the cold air as he investigates around the campsite. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of any presence. Shaken, he returns to the tent, convincing himself it was all in his head, perhaps amplified by the isolation. Back inside, he tries to sleep, but a deep, unsettling feeling gnaws at him. Just as he begins to relax, a chilling howl pierces the night, not of a wolf or a known animal, but something different, something eerily human. The sound seems to come from all directions, enveloping him in fear. Nathan sits up, his mind racing with thoughts of urban legends and tales of spirits that roam the forests. He knows he should leave, but the thought of packing up in the dark, vulnerable and exposed, terrifies him even more. He decides to wait for dawn, only a few hours away. As he waits, the events outside escalate. The ground seems to tremble faintly, and the temperature drops sharply. Frost forms on the inside of the tent. The whispers return, now clearer, as if beckoning him. Nathan clutches his knife, eyes wide open, staring at the fabric of the tent, half expecting it to be ripped away at any moment. Dawn finally arrives, and with the first light, the strange occurrences seem to dissipate. Nathan, exhausted and unnerved, packs up his camp with shaky hands, eager to leave the forest that no longer feels welcoming. As he does, he notices something odd, a set of footprints encircling his tent, too large and misshapen to belong to any animal he knows. With a backpack hefted over his shoulder, Nathan doesn't look back as he makes his way out of the forest, the chilling events of the night replaying in his mind. He knows he won't be returning to camp alone ever again, if he returns at all. As Nathan reaches the edge of the forest, Stepping into the morning light of the surrounding meadow, he takes one last look back. The forest seems normal, the dark events of the night almost unbelievable in the light of day. But as he turns to leave, a whisper catches his ear, so faint he almost convinces himself he imagined it. He quickens his pace, desperate to put as much distance between himself and the forest as possible. The meadow, bathed in sunlight, should offer safety, but the echo of that final whisper lingers, chilling him more profoundly than the night's cold ever did. The road back to civilization is a long one, giving Nathan plenty of time to reflect on the night's terrors. His mind cycles through rational explanations, each less convincing than the last. He wonders if the isolation played tricks on his mind, or perhaps some pranksters, aware of his presence, decided to have a bit of morbid fun at his expense. But the footprints and the cold whisper in the light of day defy all logical explanations. As he walks, Nathan notices an unusual heaviness in the air, a thick fog beginning to roll across the meadow from the direction of the forest. It's unnatural, too early in the day for fog, and it moves against the breeze. It swirls and dances like smoke, but there's no fire to be seen. The sun, which had been bright and comforting, now seems to struggle against this creeping mist, its light dimming with every moment. Nathan's pace becomes a jog, his previous fatigue forgotten in a surge of adrenaline. The road seems to stretch endlessly before him, each turn revealing only more of the same desolate landscape, now turning eerie as shadows lengthen and the fog thickens. He hears the whisper again, clearer this time, a soft, sibilant voice calling his name, drawing out the syllables in a haunting melody. It seems to come from the fog itself, enveloping him, chilling his skin. With a burst of panic, Nathan runs, the sound of his own heavy breathing loud in his ears. But the fog is faster, enveloping him in a cold, damp cloak. Visibility drops to mere feet, and the world becomes a monochrome of gray. He stops, realizing the futility of running when he can barely see the path in front of him. His heart pounds in his chest, each beat echoing ominously in the quiet that the fog brings. Straining his ears, Nathan listens. The whispers have ceased, replaced now by a low hum almost imperceptible, like the sound of distant thunder. It grows gradually louder, vibrating through the ground and into his bones. He feels it more than hears it, a sinister drone that suggests movement, something coming towards him, something large. Nathan finds himself walking again, not sure where to go but unable to stand still. His mind screams for him to find a way out, to escape the enclosing darkness and the oppressive, vibrating hum. He stumbles over a root, catching himself just before he falls. The fog seems to pulse with his quickened heartbeat, each throb bringing it closer, tightening around him like a noose. As he rights himself, Nathan notices something odd about the ground where he nearly fell. It's not covered in grass like the rest of the meadow. Instead, it's a patch of bare earth, circular, as if the soil has been stirred or dug up recently. He crouches to inspect it, curiosity momentarily overcoming fear. The earth is loose, freshly turned, and there are markings in it, symbols that he doesn't recognize, but which send a new wave of fear through him. They seem deliberate, a message or a sign, but of what, he cannot fathom. Standing up, Nathan feels the vibration stronger now, and the fog seems almost alive, responsive to his movements. He begins to walk again, circling the strange patch of earth, his eyes scanning the fog for any sign of movement, any hint of what might be lurking there. He feels watched, hunted, and the isolation of the meadow, once a beautiful, serene place, now feels like a trap. Suddenly, the ground trembles underfoot, a strong, definitive shake that nearly knocks him to his knees. Nathan looks around wildly, trying to locate the source of the disturbance. The hum turns into a roar, a sound so deep and terrifying that it paralyzes him. From the fog, shapes begin to materialize, forms too large and too vague to be human, moving towards him with slow, deliberate steps. Nathan backs away, his mind racing for solutions, for any means of escape. The shapes grow clearer, their forms more distinct yet still shrouded by the fog. Their movements are unnatural, jerky, as if they are not used to walking on earth. Their eyes, if they have eyes, are hidden, but Nathan feels their gaze, cold and unyielding. He turns to run, desperation lending speed to his legs, the roar in his ears now deafening. The fog seems to chase him, and the shapes, whatever they are, do not fall behind. Nathan's thoughts blur with fear, each step a gamble in the thick fog. He stumbles forward, his feet occasionally tangling in the undergrowth hidden by the dense mist. His lungs burn with the effort, and the cold air sharpens each breath he takes. The monstrous roar has morphed into a cacophony of sounds, a chorus of groans and shrieks that seem to mock his desperate attempts to escape. Nathan can no longer tell if he's gaining distance or circling back towards the danger. The fog disorients, confuses, and seems almost sentient in its behavior. Panic grips him tighter with each passing moment, the primal part of his brain screaming that he's prey, stalked by something ancient and malevolent. The symbols he saw etched into the earth flash in his mind, a warning he had failed to heed. He realizes now that he might have disturbed something sacred or profane, a boundary meant not to be crossed by the living. Amidst his flight, Nathan's foot catches on a larger root, sending him sprawling to the ground. The impact knocks the wind out of him, and for a moment, he lies there, gasping for air, the mist swirling around him. He tries to rise, but a wave of dizziness overwhelms him, his head spinning as the ground seems to tilt and sway. The fog thickens, condensing into solid forms that hover just out of clear sight, their presence oppressive, almost tangible. As he struggles to his knees, Nathan feels a chill unlike any other, as if the very air around him wishes to consume his warmth. The shapes in the mist now circle him, their forms massive and imposing, moving with a purposeful grace that belies their grotesque appearances. He can hear their breathing now, a raspy, labored sound that syncs with the pulsating hum still vibrating through the earth. He looks up, trying to make out any details that might give him a clue as to what these beings are. But the fog blurs their features, leaving only impressions of twisted limbs and gaping maws. One of the shapes moves closer, the ground rumbling beneath its weight. Nathan can see it more clearly now, a towering figure, its body covered in what looks like matted fur or tangled vines. The eyes, if they are eyes, glow faintly through the mist, a deep, malevolent red. Desperation surges within him, and Nathan scrambles backward, his hands clawing at the wet ground. His back hits something solid, an unexpectedly warm and pulsating mass. He turns his head slowly, terror mounting as he comes face to face with another creature, its features just inches from his own. This one is different, smaller but no less horrifying. Its face is a jumbled mess of soil and roots, with hollows where eyes should be, and a mouth that opens and closes with a sickening squelch. Nathan tries to scream, but the sound catches in his throat, a strangled whimper the only noise he manages. The creature tilts its head, as if curious, then extends what could be an arm, the appendage ending in multiple writhing tendrils. They reach for Nathan, brushing against his face with a touch that burns like frostbite. He jerks away, the sudden movement granting him a burst of adrenaline. Nathan scrambles to his feet, running blindly, no longer caring about direction, only the primal need to escape. The creatures do not chase him this time, instead, they remain silent observers, their forms retreating into the mist as he distances himself from them. The ground under Nathan's feet begins to change, growing marshy and wet. He's nearing a river, the realization sparking a flicker of hope. Water might offer a barrier, a means to throw off whatever these things are. With renewed purpose, he pushes forward, the roar of rushing water growing louder with each step. He emerges from the fog at the riverbank, the sudden clarity of vision almost blinding. The river is wide and tumultuous, swollen from recent rains. Nathan doesn't hesitate, he dives into the cold water, letting the current pull him away from the shore, away from the horrors lurking in the mist. As he's carried downstream, Nathan glances back. The fog remains dense on the river's edge, a wall of white that seems impenetrable. He can still feel the creature's eyes on him, watching as he flees their domain. The river carries him away, but the sense of being hunted lingers, a scar upon his psyche that may never fully heal. Exhausted, cold, and terrified, Nathan allows the river to guide his escape, the waters a temporary sanctuary from the nightmare behind him. But as the sounds of the forest return, the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds, a deeper silence sets in, one that suggests his ordeal might not be over. The mist from the forest begins to creep over the river, tendrils of fog reaching out over the water, hinting that the boundary between the natural and the supernatural might not be as firm as he hoped. As Nathan struggles against the pull of the current, he becomes aware that the fog is not merely following him, it seems to be emanating from him, as if he himself is now a source of this otherworldly mist. The realization strikes him with a cold dread. What if his intrusion into their domain has marked him? What if he has become a part of the forest's dark folklore, an unwilling participant in some ancient and ongoing horror? The water around him grows colder, and the mist thickens, swirling with an intensity that mirrors his rising panic. Nathan tries to swim faster, his strokes desperate and uncoordinated. He looks to the riverbanks, searching for a sign of civilization, a path back to the normal world. But the banks are shrouded in thick vegetation, and the mist obscures any further view. He feels isolated, as though the river has carried him not just away from danger, but also away from the reality he knows. The temperature drops further, and the river seems to slow, its currents less urgent. Nathan's limbs grow heavy, his movements sluggish as the cold seeps into his bones. He fights against the lethargy, his mind racing to find a way out, to escape the enveloping fog that now seems to pulse with a life of its own. He hears them again, the whispering voices, no longer just at the edge of his hearing but clear, insistent. They speak in a language he doesn't understand, yet the tone is unmistakable, inviting, coaxing him to stop struggling, to give in to the inevitable. Nathan shouts back at them, a raw, hoarse cry of defiance that echoes off the unseen riverbanks. The fog responds, swirling faster, condensing into forms that are almost human in shape. Figures emerge, walking on the water's surface, their movements synchronized with the swirling mist. They are closer this time, their features more defined. Their faces are hauntingly beautiful yet utterly alien, expressions blank yet filled with an incomprehensible longing. Nathan realizes that he is not just fleeing from a physical threat, but from a spiritual entanglement. His very soul feels ensnared by the mist, each breath drawing him deeper into its grasp. The river no longer feels like a sanctuary but more like a conduit, a pathway meant to deliver him into the hands of these spectral beings. As he swims, Nathan spots something in the water ahead, a boat, old and waterlogged, but seemingly solid. With his last reserves of strength, he reaches it and hauls himself aboard. The boat creaks under Nathan's weight as he collapses onto its damp floorboards, gasping for air. The mist swirls around him, thickening into an impenetrable wall that obscures everything beyond a few feet. He realizes with a sinking feeling that he's trapped, caught between the river that offers a slim chance of escape and the mist that seems to be closing in on all sides. The voices continue their haunting whispers, now louder and more urgent. They seem to come from within the mist itself, from the very air that surrounds him. Nathan clutches at his chest, his heart pounding with fear and exertion. The boat rocks gently on the water, a surreal calm in contrast to the chaos inside his mind. As he tries to gather his thoughts, a figure materializes from the mist at the bow of the boat. It's a woman, her features ethereal yet strikingly human. Her eyes are pools of darkness, and her skin seems to emit a faint glow. Nathan's breath catches in his throat as he recognizes her from the symbols etched in the earth, the guardian, the keeper of the forest's secrets. The woman speaks, her voice a melodic echo that resonates through Nathan's very being. "You have trespassed," she intones, her gaze unwavering. "You have disturbed the balance, and now you must face the consequences." Nathan struggles to find his voice, his mind racing with questions and regrets. "I didn't mean to," he stammers, his words lost in the swirling mist. "I just wanted," but the woman raises a hand, silencing him. "Intentions matter little in the grand design," she says, her tone neither condemning nor forgiving. "The forest demands retribution, and you must pay the price." Nathan's fear spikes, a cold sweat breaking out on his skin. He knows he's at the mercy of forces far beyond his understanding, and escape seems futile. The mist closes in further, enveloping the boat in a cocoon of impenetrable white. The woman steps closer, her presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. "You will become one with the forest," she declares, her voice now a whisper that echoes in Nathan's mind. "Your essence will feed its ancient hunger, and your fate will be entwined with its eternal cycle." Nathan's screams are swallowed by the mist as it consumes him, merging his form with its amorphous mass. His consciousness fades, replaced by a sense of oneness with the forest, with the ancient spirits that dwell within its depths. He becomes a part of the mist, a lost soul condemned to wander the boundary between the living and the dead. The boat drifts aimlessly on the river, a silent witness to the horror that unfolded within its confines. The mist dissipates, returning the riverbank to normalcy, save for the lingering sense of unease that permeates the air. The forest watches, silent and inscrutable, its secrets preserved within the swirling mists. Nathan's fate serves as a warning to those who dare to venture into its heart alone, a cautionary tale of the price one must pay for disturbing the ancient slumber of the Allegheny forest. And as night falls once again, the whispers return, carried on the breeze that rustles through the trees. They speak of forgotten legends and restless spirits, of souls lost to the darkness that lurks within the forest's embrace. The tale of Nathan, the solitary camper who dared to challenge the unknown, becomes a part of the forest's lore, a story whispered around campfires and shared in hushed tones, a tale of horror and warning, of a fate sealed in the misty depths of the Allegheny forest.